Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me, Patty. Great to be here.
I'm intrigued by the work you're doing in the world. I see the results of some of the things that you're offering in terms of getting out to a lot of people in the world. And I'm curious how you got started. I'm curious about your journey and would love to hear your story.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I got into mindfulness and just mindful practices in general soon after college, because I took a look in the mirror and I had been told that if you learned how to drive a car and balance a checkbook, that was all there was to life. And I thought, wow, that's going to be a pretty sad 80 years. And so I took a look at that and thought there's got to be another invitation to a human life. And so I started practicing things like mindfulness, meditation, yoga, and just went into a deep personal self-inquiry. And then over the years, recognized some of those benefits and wanted to share them. And then, that drew me to things like coaching and training to be a psychotherapist. And then eventually going more the executive coaching route and wanting to scale my sphere of influence. Life is short and wanted to have the greatest possible impact. So I started to surround myself with people that were like-minded and wanted to do similarly and had complementary services, but were aligned ideologically. And yeah, it never was the goal really to build a company or grow a company, but at a certain point we all looked at each other and said, we're sort of like a company. Let's do this. And so in 2018, Mindful Life, Mindful Work became a C Corp in the United States. And, it's gone through many iterations. I think that, we sort of have lean startup ideology. We pivot when the need is there and, we want to be of service. So when something's not working, we don't keep trying to push it uphill. We just say, oh, we've got to meet the need.
That sounds like a good philosophy of life. And I've
Mm.
noticed that you've been doing in-person meetups around the world and meeting the needs in different ways. I've noticed a rebrand. Can you share a little bit about what you're seeing in the world and how your services are shifting to meet those needs?
Yeah, I mean, I think that longer term, I wanted to build things really simply. I mean, even before mindfulness, my guiding personal principle is simplicity. Keep things simple. And I think being is simple, and we like to proliferate and be creative, and that's all wonderful. But when we really just pause, reality is pretty simple. And as a guiding principle, then to move from that place to build and grow things from that place. And I think the world is longing for that. I think the world is longing for less of a frenetic pace, less proliferation of thought and action, and more groundedness. I think that's where the words embodiment come in, and practices that really bring us home to ourselves in a way that's restful. And so, ideally, all of the things that we create come from that place and feel like that place. Even though we're busy as could be, we don't want to be untethered from ourselves to do a lot.
So, who are some of the teachers that you've learned from? I noticed that you had said untethered, right? And we know of The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. Are there people that you look towards on your journey? Have there been people that you've looked towards? And who are they? And what are the lessons that you feel have been most impactful to you?
Wow, that's a great question. And it's remarkable. I've done so many of these interviews, and nobody's ever asked me that question. And it is a central question, right? So many, I mean, at every stage have met amazing people and have either surrounded myself with amazing peers that I consider teachers. I mean, ultimately, of course, every human being that you look into their eyes is your teacher. And always have prided myself in being able to learn what was in front of me, whether that was with a CEO or a homeless person. Like, how do you meet the moment in a way that's skillful? And but there have been a few really key figures, and much of my own personal growth has centered around awakening and sort of spiritual growth. And so, very central, and maybe the most central would be Jack Kornfield. Spent a lot of time with Jack Kornfield a couple decades ago. Still consider him a major influence in the way that I move as a man in this world. And, at various times, I did a lot of yoga teacher training. So folks like Eric Schiffman, who was based down in Santa Monica, was very pivotal at a certain stage. Richard Miller, who's based in the North Bay, who's the founder of iRest, uh, although had sort of a light touch with him, it was a significant touch. Also studied with John Wellwood for a short time, and his books were very influential for me. So these figures, and mostly male figures, because I was looking for a different male model. And those were the people that I found. I was looking for a softer, gentler, yet still firm and clear male model. There's been te women teachers that have influenced me, though. Carol Wilson. Only did one retreat with her, but her teachings are so profound that I put her very up near the top of the list. Yeah, and of course, in any relationship with man or woman, we learn, ultimately relationship is designed to help us grow. It's not designed to make us happy. And so that's, once we come to that realization, and that comes from Eckhart Tolle, of course. And so, yeah, just, I mean, hundreds of books, hundreds of workshops, lots of trainings, lots of experiences. And, I think eventually each of us makes ourselves a melting pot. And so I'm grateful to have melted.
I love that. That's a really nice way of saying it. How would you, if someone were to ask you, because I haven't known you very long at all, how would you describe yourself before and after? And I know it's a process. I know awakening doesn't happen and we're completely a different being, but well, how would you describe your journey and the process of transformation?
Mine is probably a somewhat unique case because there was a specific day. It was December 23rd, 1997. I had an experience that was significant. And prior to that, I would say I usually sum up that experience in a very simple way that I went from isolation to community. I went from feeling disconnected to feeling infinitely connected. And so a lot of my work over the years has been a translation of that experience on December 23rd. It's like the Bhagavad Gita says. The Bhagavad Gita says we have two births. The first birth is into the world of form. Everyone walking around in a body has had that birth. The second birth is into the world of awareness. And people get that at different times and in different ways. Some get it suddenly, and some get it gradually. And so I think I was just in a lot of pain. I think that people say, how do you get into mindful approaches? Well, my own suffering. That's how you get into wanting to find a better way and a more human and skillful way to move through the world.
So was it
So
a bottom out? Was it a bottoming out, or was it another type of experience, if you're willing to share?
yeah, I think I was just so hungry for connection that and my threshold for suffering was so low that I was ready to crack. It's like a forest fire is required to open up certain seeds for them to be planted. And I think the chaos had reached in my personal life had reached a certain point, and just sort of my psychological inner life had become so sort of locked down in a certain way, um, and was just hungry for a different way, and didn't really knew and didn't know that there were other options. When we're in that constricted place, whatever place that is for us, it's hard to know of anything different. But I was suspicious. I started to do practices that were sort of opening to the possibility of the unknown, and sort of planting that seed for whatever was to arise, and getting comfortable with uncertainty, and taking a little bit of a psychological leap of faith, which can be really frightening. And yeah, I consider myself very fortunate.
It's beautiful. I've known different people on the path, and even myself, where when we choose a new path or when we become more aware of the where life is, that some people fall away, move away, or we choose that. What has sort of been your experience on that harder side that we don't always think about?
I like to answer this question by referring to a metaphor in Hinduism that's very often used. It's called the metaphor of the forest. And the forest is sort of the unknown new stage of our life that we want to move into. And the forest symbolizes sort of the scary darkness, but also sort of the romantic allure of the unknown and the darkness. And so many times when we're ready to go into a new stage in our life, we don't want to go in alone. We want somebody to hold our hand or be with some friends and go into the forest. The issue is everybody's on their own schedule. And so you have to go into the forest alone. And what you often don't recognize when you enter a new forest is it's multidimensional, meaning there's other sides. People are entering from all around the forest. It's round, roughly. And there's others in there that have already made that step. So our welcoming committee, our new tribe is already awaiting. And hopefully we're going into new forests all the time and trying out new things all the time. Um, but that's been mostly my experiences. I've been welcomed. There's always the frightening moment of, can I do this new thing? I mean, the even like going from yoga to meditation was a different forest. It's like even things that now seem so similar were very different at the time. And I've been pretty blessed that I've always felt pretty well received when I've done that. And at a certain point, just like any muscle, if you work it enough, uh, fear falls away because there's trust. It's like Nisargadatta says. He says, "How do you learn how to trust?" Well, you trust a little bit. You practice trusting, and then you get the feedback. And if it was okay, well, then next time you trust a tiny bit more. Trust grows in this very organic, in some ways, in a lean startup sort of way. So that's been my experience. I haven't had that many bad experiences or even challenging. I think I was so hungry that forward was the way and it was going to happen no matter what.
I love that. I've had, and maybe that was my question, I've had some folks that expect the old me,
Mm.
and the old me sort of has shifted. And so I found some rough edges at times when I want to share sort of my awareness, my shift in awareness to more of an energetic space that not everyone necessarily is ready to understand or wants to understand or is even curious about.
So thank you for reminding me. I hadn't finished my answer because I had forgotten the second part, which is the most important part, which you just named, which is when you leave one tribe to go to another tribe, it's not that you're saying the old tribe is no good. It just no longer serves the new expanded need. I can still access those old tribes when I'm in the mood and they're still there. But was there a stage that I went from 200 friends to two friends in 5 days? Yes, there was. But I was ready for that. I felt like I was so hungry for growth. Um, that it was okay. And so I went through actually a period where, and this is a very long period, where I went through a liminal distancing process, which means to distance from the limit to the limit from what we know. And I went through at least a decade or more experience where I was doing that deliberately because I knew that I had a reset. I once heard somebody say, "Oh, it feels like brainwashing." Oh, but my brain needed to be washed, and and so I needed a reset, and so I very consciously engaged in that.
So it was a process. You had that moment where you made a decision to change your life, and then the process continued for you. My question would be for those people on that precipice, on that decision making of, I've got this tribe, they seem like home, but I'm drowning or I'm just not feeling my best. I'm not energized. Maybe this isn't my tribe. If they're questioning, what would you recommend? Where would you recommend they start?
I would say that fundamentally reality is kind and that you will be held wherever you step. Not always in the way that you want to be held, but you will be held in the way that is most needed. No matter what you decide, you can't make a wrong decision because any decision you made is naturally the right decision because you've made it. I don't believe in the possibility of making wrong decisions. And so once that's eradicated from the possibilities, then you can always circle back, but there's no turning back. And yeah, that's been my experience. And and find people. Pick a personal interest. I my first interest was personal growth, so I didn't know where to go, so I started going to the library and just reading personal growth books and hanging out there and carrying books around that people would say, "What are you reading?" And got me into conversations like those. Those were some of the beginnings after my profound experience. It's like Jack's after the ecstasy of the laundry. Just because you've had an insight doesn't mean it gets integrated. It takes something else to digest the experience and actually fill it out with, real scaffolding and have the identity evolve. Anybody can have peak experiences, drink a cup of strong coffee, and but how to actually sustain something and have continuity is a lifetime practice. I'm almost into my 30th year of practice here, and the process never ends, ideally. To be alive and to grow is always to be changing.
Mhm. And I absolutely align with that whole process. And
Mm.
I intend to, I'm actually very excited. I would say, maybe a year ago or so, and I was looking at my life, and maybe it was when I was still at Stanford, and I thought, I'm not that old. I'm not 60 yet, but another 30 years, like, what am I going to do? I've had this really good life. And now it's not that I was bored, but I was kind of bored. Like, I was kind of annoyed with all the things that had to be done, but wasn't really fun. And what do I want to do next? And then once I understood more about this connectedness that we all have, this awakening, this awareness, life became really fun as I
Mm.
started to understand other people's journeys and without judgment. It's just paying attention to where we all are and understanding this glorious opportunity we have for growth and for understanding and feeling and connecting with others. And that's what I feel is such a great opportunity for all of us as we evolve and become saturated with peace, right? That beautiful divine energy that we have inside of us that just wants to be in nature, to feel our authentic energy and being and feel whole. And I think that's the opportunity we all have.
Yeah, I mean, so beautifully put, that shift from the unknown being either scary or boring, to it being exciting, to it being something you want to move towards because it's a learning opportunity, and to recognize. I mean, that's where early in my practice, it's like, oh, this isn't going to be boring. This is not going to be a boring ride. This is going to be a really exciting ride. It doesn't mean it's not going to be challenging, but it's not going to be boring. And that is really sort of a celebration of curiosity. Like, I wonder, can I learn from this experience? I may not be learning what the other person or people want me to be learning, but what am I learning? If I look at awareness and from awareness in this context, what lessons am I getting from anything, from the way a car just drove by? What did I learn from that? And people say, well, that's silly. Why? Well, you could learn so much about that driver. When I used to teach a little bit more meditation and a motorcycle would go by outside and everybody's in meditation, I'd say, did you visualize a man driving that motorcycle? Because
It
99,
becomes my papa.
yeah,
Cycle going by becomes him.
yeah, because 99% of people just associate a motorcycle with a male. And it's like, oh, like when we recognize that everything is an opportunity to learn from and to see our own judgments and to see our own layering and our own sort of thought patterns and habits, then it's infinitely fascinating.
Mhm. It is. And that's what I'm looking forward to every day of my life, being curious, being grateful for what I have, and hoping to help others do the same because it's a suffering, right? Now that I'm in this space, I watch as other people suffer. And my hope is that they will ask for help, but it's not my place. And I believe that their suffering can be reduced tremendously with that awareness. And I'm excited for the opportunities that more and more people are willing to get curious and understand this.
Yeah. Yeah. Some will come because they've gotten that curiosity bug. And our job is ultimately to refine our own presence in a way that it becomes an invitation for those that want it. And for those that don't, they're on a different schedule and to not force it. Um, yeah, and that's a practice in patience for those of us that have been practicing for a while. Yeah, I mean, I like to say I'm just getting started, and I say that because it both keeps me humble, but it also acknowledges a certain amount of greatness that, boy, even at almost 30 years, just at the beginning of potential. And that's what's exciting about the new projects is it feels like they're taking the next step into sort of this is where this can go.
So, if people want to know more about what you're doing, what you're offering, and the community that you're building, we'll definitely put some information in the link with the other information on YouTube. But what else would you like to say about that to welcome people into your community?
I think Mindful Life, Mindful Work, which is the name of my company, has done a good job over the last year, especially of recognizing where people spend their time. And, they spend their time in communities. They spend their time acquiring products and things and services, attending events and consuming content. And so what we've tried to do is we've tried to meet them in all of those areas with just a bit of mindful slant on something that looks pretty familiar. We try to make everything accessible and applicable and to be non-shaming in a way that a newbie or somebody who's really an absolute beginner can be like, oh, these are normal people. This isn't something that needs to scare me away. And so the community network, mindset-social.com is a great place. Mindful Life, Mindful Work is the root website, mindfullifemindfulwork.com. We have Mindswell Marketplace, which is a place with mindful products. And then we have community events and then content production. So folks are welcome to stop by, send us a message, and definitely join Mindset Social because it's just a place where you can either participate actively or passively and to just see what others are saying about mindful approaches.
Wonderful. And I look forward to being part of it and working with you on some projects in the future. So, thank you for being here today.
Wow, it's been a pleasure, Patty. Thank you for having me.